And one thing I know to be true is that we are all connected. And so, we should all maybe have a desire to, if we're contributing things, let's continue to connect with one another. And it's not like, oh, we know each other, we don't know each other. It's like, hey, your victory is my victory. My kindness to another person really is better for me. And just sort of doing that more, I think is, if nothing else, it makes our own lives better. And I believe that more and more each day. To win is uncomfortable. You have to work hard to be the coach, to cut somebody, to bench somebody, to tell somebody they better get it together. Like whatever the million things are, all of this is uncomfortable. But I always say, especially in sports or the world for that matter, we try to pretend, but nobody cares. They're here to eat your lunch. And so I'd rather have a coach that prepares me instead of can't help me understand the defined lines of hey, you know what? You're not good enough right now. Meaning even what you're giving me, not you, the person, or your value as a human being, but you are not working hard enough. You're not giving me everything you have. And I'd rather that than I go and I have an opponent, let's say across the net, who's like, let me show you how ill prepared you are. And, they don't break a sweat. And before you know it, you're on your way home.
Well, welcome everyone to another episode of Masters of the Game. And I am so excited today to introduce you to someone that I've known for a while, right? You see her in the news, you see her in magazines, you've seen her on the volleyball court, both the hard court and also mainly the beach court. And it's something just really special for me that I get to spend the next few minutes with Miss Gabby Reece. So Gabby, thank you so much for spending your time with me today.
Well, thank you. It's always an honor to be invited to have a conversation.
Absolutely. And you have such a fascinating background, right? Now we'll dive into the athletic side and then what you're up to now. But just to give a little color, I feel like one of those things we should start with maybe what you don't do first, because there's less to talk about. You are so involved. It's incredible.
Well, listen, there's a lot of things I don't do, but I try to take advantage of the things that are in front of me to do.
Yeah, it's amazing. And you look at, wellness entrepreneur, podcast host, best-selling author, or a huge influencer in women's health and fitness space. You're a former professional athlete. What I think is fascinating, you are Nike's first female spokesperson and shoe designer. And when your shoes came out, you outsold Air Jordan, which is incredible, right? When you look at that, you look at co-founding Laird Superfoods with your husband, Laird Hamilton, who is a big time surfer and just again legend in that sport as well. You are the host of the Gabby Reece show, right? It's going through and getting into wellness and performance and inviting these top experts and thought leaders just to talk about health and wellness and how to actually apply it and implement it in your life. And then you look at your sports background as well. I mean, I could go on and on about just all the records, right, at Florida State where you played volleyball, but also you took your 4-person team. It was the first place at the first ever beach volleyball world championships. You were team captain of that team. You have all these records in that as well around blocks leader, kills 4 years in a row, offensive player of the year. You've got just this fascinating background, right? And again, author, podcast host, doing some cool things. So I've got so many questions that I want to throw at you and talk about, but I always like to start this off with kind of a general question, get you thinking a little bit. But when you think back to your athletic career, and that can be any level, beach, hard court, wherever it is, what's one of the greatest kind of memories you have from playing the sport of volleyball?
I think for me, honestly, every athlete is different. But if I really think about it, there was a couple of things that really stood out for me was being a part of something that felt really important to me, especially as a younger person. Being a part of a group that had a common goal was really a very powerful thing for me. And also earning my own self-respect. I think there was something about, hey, you're working really hard. You're working hard in practice. You're doing your best to try to improve. And I think that had a cascading effect about how I got to develop not only a different type of relationship with myself, but also a way to respect myself for having a lot of moments where working hard was the requirement.
Yes. I love that. So let's unpack that a little bit, because I'm curious your opinion on this, because I think in today's environment, it feels like, and this isn't true in all cases, right? But we're in a environment of like, it's about me, right? It's about my exposure. It's about my next step. It's about my NIL contract or my big contract, all those sorts of things. And one of the things that I hear from a lot of athletes is kind of what you spoke about on that first piece, right? Of like, you're part of something bigger. And there's kind of that bigger purpose as a team. Do you believe that that's one of the keys to success, like in the sport of volleyball, or just sports in general, or life? Or I'm just curious your opinion on that.
Yeah, I think the notion of 1 and 1 equals 3 is a interesting kind of approach to life. Listen, tennis players are out there by themselves, right? They win and lose, but ultimately, if you actually even look behind them, they have a team of people, right? Who are there when they're down, who coach them, who train against them, who give them prehab and rehab. And so even in a sport like that, which has an intense kind of feeling of singularity, marathon runners, I don't know, there's a few. I think when you live, whether it's in sport or out of sport, and you realize that together we are better. It doesn't mean we're going to hang out all the time. It doesn't mean that we're going to agree about all things. It means in these certain ways we could come together and be certainly better and go further with each other's help and different talents. And so I think that is a really gratifying feeling to move through life, because there's a million studies on happiness, and it all has to do with meaningful relationships, somebody to call if you feel like you're in a bind, and the notion of community. So I think that I understood that pretty early.
Talk to me about like when you learned that. You talk about learning it early. Was it a high school thing? Was it a Florida State thing? Was it on the beach volleyball circuit? When was that for you? And like, what kind of drove that? Was it just you figuring it out yourself? Was it coaches? Was it family? What kind of drove that for you?
Well, I'm an only child, first of all, and I didn't always live with my parents when I was little. And then I moved back in with my mother, and I grew up in the Caribbean, and I was an only child. And I probably spent a lot of time maybe alone, but also with friends of the family. And so it started early with even just having people who were close to the family sort of taking me in. And then I had a volleyball coach when I dabbled in volleyball. Maybe my sophomore year of high school, I had a gentleman named Kenny, and he would drive me to practice. And so that was my first taste of somebody kind of bringing me in. And then I moved to St. Petersburg, Florida, my junior year. And there I had a teammate actually named Karen Mulholland, who unfortunately passed away many years ago, 25 years ago. And she showed me around, and she was actually a very good athlete. And sort of brought me in. And I was 6'3" at 15, my junior year. And I wasn't particularly good at volleyball or basketball for that matter. So they sort of had patience with me. And I had a basketball coach at that time, Dean Souls, that I still know today, that again would take me in and, sort of encourage me to get along with my mother and just kind of work it out. And then when I went to Florida State, it really solidified it. I had a coach that still is a great friend of mine, Dr. Cecile Renaud, and she was a powerful mentor. And there I was a part of something, that team, we were good in our region. If we came and played UCLA, it wouldn't have been that great, but where we were pretty good. And she was a great leader. And so, that really got solidified for me, that understanding of we can be different and have different beliefs. And, maybe even again, off the court, we're not going to spend a lot of time together. But here in this way, I'm going to respect you, and I'm going to work hard on my behalf and on your behalf and for you, because you're my teammate. And when I go out to play, I want to win for myself, but I also want to win for you. And that really got locked in there.
Yes. Well, and a lot of coaches listening right or watching right now too are asking that question of like, okay, I get it. I want to do that. I want to make sure there's that respect, right, built between the players on the team, things like that, knowing that you don't have to be best friends. You don't have to hang out. You don't have to do all these things, right? But there's a certain level of respect that's required. How did that, your coach, like, or maybe coaches, like, like, what would I see? Is it like conversations you're having, or like, how would I coach that if I were trying to get that across to a volleyball coach or baseball coach, whatever, right now?
Well, I want to put a caveat in there. My volleyball coach had to deal with some pretty unconventional things with me. I started modeling after my sophomore year. I gave up my scholarship after my sophomore year. I paid play. or after my freshman year, sorry. And then after my sophomore year, I gave up my scholarship. And she's the one who helped me kind of have this dual life, right? So here's what I know is when an athlete, if they're smart enough, understands that their coach cares more about them first as a person than as an athlete. And what was very clear to me about Cecile is I was sort of an inconvenience. Yes, I was worth it as a player to her to sort of figure out how to keep me on the team. But she showed me pretty clearly that she was first behind me as a human being. And so what does that build? That builds an athlete will go through a wall for you. If it's not just about, hey, you're a number and I need you to produce. And once if you're out, and then I'll find someone else. But when an athlete feels looked after, loved, respected, and that beyond the court, the coach cares, I think that starts there. So weirdly, I would say love. And then beyond that, because ultimately we're trying to help people develop as human beings. Yes, you want to win, but really a great coach makes you a better person. Never mind athlete when you are move on from working with them. And then the other thing for me, listen, my coach was very hard. And and even though I was close to her, I had a lot of respect and reverence for her. She was always prepared. She had a game plan. She did what she required of you to do, right? And there was sort of this understanding of, we're going to conduct ourselves like this. We're going to work hard. And she would say to us, like, in a game, she'd be like, hey, listen, I kicked your butt all week. Now you go out there and kick their butt. So it's all of it, right? It's like, be on top of your game as the coach. Have a game plan. Know how to communicate to each athlete. Every athlete is different. Some needs a kick in the pants. Some needs a pat on the back. Some needs like just a lot of space. If you don't understand that nuance, then you're not really paying attention as a coach. Everybody has a different language. And then how do you bring all those languages like an orchestra together, those instruments together to help them play together to make, this song that you're making? So I think it's a lot of psychology as well. And not ultimately, you can't rule by consensus. So unfortunately, and in this day and age, I know it's harder to implement. One person really has to be in charge. You can take feedback, you can take suggestions, you can then ask the team, but ultimately one person, they've got to be at least the leader who's holding the whole space. And at times, I think coaches now have a harder time either being allowed to do that or thinking they can do that.
Yeah, it's a great point, right? I'm a big believer in like that art of influence, right? And in order to influence people for the better, right? With love and all that sort of stuff. Again, you have to start from that good place in your heart, right? If I actually care about these athletes or these individuals. So starting from that place, then you have to spend the time to get to know them, and you influence them by understanding them, to your point, right? Of like, I can push your buttons different than probably you can push mine, right? Or vice versa. It's like, but figuring that out and spending the time is the critical piece to this.
Well, and if you're going to demand of an athlete and ask them to work hard, sometimes it's hard to dig in and get it for yourself. And so sometimes athletes will do it for a coach or for their team. And the only way that trust is developed is with love. And if you feel like your coach doesn't really give a shit about you, at the end, I don't think most athletes are going to get over that. And so I think what starts with the coach, with the leader, is you better be the thing. So you need to be disciplined. It's like you have to be all the traits that you think you're going to demand of your athletes. And I think it's really, really important.
Yeah, I always tell a story about my son, Gabby. I know you've got, 3 children. I always tell a story about my son where I was explaining to him one day this phrase I said, if you have children one day, which I hope they do and they experience if they choose to, right? Mm-hmm. But there's a saying, you will learn that your children are watching. And I was explaining the difference between your children are listening and children are watching, right? So I can talk all day long. And I use this example of, if I tell you to do push-ups and you never see me do a push-up, what are you going to do? And he goes, I won't do a push-up. I'm like, exactly. So, and I think that's underestimated, right? You're like the kids, athletes, like people in business, they're watching. And it's not to put pressure on you, but just understand, like, you set a standard, you are the standard. And you have to make sure you're operating from there if you expect your athletes to do the same.
Listen, I used to teach basically a free fitness class on Kauai for about, somewhere between like 60, 80, maybe sometimes 100 people. And I charge everybody $1. And a lot of these people I knew pretty informally, like, hey, what's up? Let me tell you, when I walked in the room, because it was it could be chaos very quickly if I didn't get on top of it. I walked in the room and I would say, good morning. Good morning. But that was also like, I'm not here to chit chat with you. I'm not here to get into it. I've come here to get this space ready for all of us to work. And so even in the little things that a coach can do, there's a time and a place. Maybe a team's just come on a road trip and they've played 3 games on the road and they're on a bus. In that moment, there's a different intimacy, a little more playfulness. Maybe there's music playing, something's happening. That's fine. But then, okay, business as usual. We're going into the gym. We have practice. We're doing the thing. So coaches, I think it's really an art to understanding what's appropriate when, because it is also those times on that bus where you get to see your coach be a little funnier or a little warmer. That's nice too.
Yes.
There.
Great point. There in that environment.
Yeah.
And then know when it's not that time.
Right. Because what you're telling the team is we're here for business now. Because also as a team, I look at my coach and I have this confidence because I go, oh, she's focused or he's focused. Like it's business. Not like, hey, okay. It's like, it's like, and you can be funny and do whatever, but it's like, no, we're here. We've got a job to do. And so my coach in college was very much like that. And I have a lot of coaching style that I borrowed from her, which was like, you can be funny, you can be direct, but you better be on it as the coach. Yes. And also be loving. Like within it all, it's not about domination. I talk about this a lot. It's not about domination. It's about keeping order and holding space so we can get our work done and do it seamlessly and efficiently. And we can all be better when we leave. Not about I'm, master of the universe and I'm going to show you how tough I am. I don't think that always works either.
Very true. Do you think is that a skill, like learning to kind of develop? Can that be learned, or is that something you're born with, Gabby, in your opinion?
I think you're born with it and you can develop it to a better level. I think if you don't have the capability to read people pretty quickly and know how to communicate succinctly with very few words, but get your point across in the language that the other person is speaking, I don't know that coaching would be your thing. And you might have guys who are really good at X's and O's, but they keep those guys in rooms, right? And they watch film and they give you stats and they help the guys who know how to communicate that to the people. So that there are people who are certainly brilliant at understanding the game and maybe a more complex game like football where there's a lot of X's and O's, but that person may not have as much contact with the athletes.
Yeah, that's a great point. And it sounds like, again, something we always talk about too is like you taking lessons from your coach and developing your own coaching philosophy, right? Your own coaching style, but taking the good and bad and all those sorts of things. And you get in your coaching you've done over the years. I mean, how would you describe, I don't know, your coaching style or philosophy or what it's like to play for you? I don't know. I know you've done kind of different scenarios, but
all my coaching has been in movement. I've never coached volleyball. So my coaching has been pool training, which is very, very scary for most people. You are, anywhere between 3 to 12 feet of water with dumbbells. A lot of people have trauma around water. It's a very truthful environment. Or I developed a workout curriculum called High X. So all my coaching has been in movement. So the pool has been the greatest teacher for me because you really have to take care of people and protect them and push them at the same time. So it's really interesting because it's a very unusual environment. There's no air. There's all kinds of stuff. It's a primal fear, right? I think it's like falling, burning, getting eaten by something and drowning are like very primal fears for people. Yes. So that's been I've had to be the most adaptable because I better read quickly in your eyes. Is this working for you or isn't? Because if it's not, I need to move you in a much safer environment to keep the situation positive and keep you progressing from where you are. Or I can see quickly you can actually go a little further and deeper, and I want to keep your attention and move you along so your experience reflects that. So it's been a great teacher, and you pay very close attention. And again, it's about articulating things. I think you have to be able to articulate things in a way so people can incorporate that so you can make it easier for them and they can do it.
It's interesting because it relates, I think, to any sport, right? What you're talking about is, to your point, it's like I have to know my people, and you're in an environment in the pool, especially where it's like, it's kind of life or death, right? Really. I mean,
Or it
if you're in
feels
deeper
like it to the
waters,
person. It feels
or
like it
feels
to the
like it.
person because we've never put anyone in a situation that they're not going to be safe. But to them,
Yes.
it could feel like that very easily.
I think that's fascinating because I think that applies. It's so applicable to everything, right? Because even as a volleyball player, I imagine you were put in positions where you were like, "What am I doing? I feel like I don't know what's going on." Going back to volleyball career, like, how did you work through that, and keep working hard? Use those words before. It's like hard work gets you there, but how did you work through that? And then how does that relate to like kind of that pool work you do? I find that's fascinating.
Well, in volleyball, in my freshman year, my coach could tell you there were 8 freshmen that came in with me or 7 other girls. So there's only 12 girls on a team at that time on indoor. So I had to play and I was just learning how to be a middle for real. And I thought, oh God, I am just in the way over here. But I think part of my, if we call it success as an athlete, has always actually been that I'm coachable. And so I'm interested, like, what is she saying? So what do I need to do? And I've always been more focused on trying to accomplish the goal and being able to put aside my own anxiousness or fear and say, no, let's focus on what the goal is and what do we need to do that. So that's always been a really helpful mechanism for me to skill, because there was a lot of times that I felt super out of place and that I didn't know. And then I learned how to play a little bit and it got a lot easier. But, I've had coaches, and especially Cecile, because that was my roughest time as an athlete, because it was much more competitive and I had to catch up. By the time I got to the pros, I had a great coach, Gary Sato, but I was sort of at the place that I could receive it a lot easier. I had Cecile say to me, listen, you'll figure it out or you'll work it out. And so there's something to be said for when you don't feel or believe you can do it and your coach sees the things in you. They just know you need more reps, or you need to see it or feel it once and the brain will go, oh yeah, I know what we're doing. And so I have used that when I coach people in the pool. I've almost had to override their fear, because they have fear, deep fear, with them feeling like they can believe me and that I wouldn't put them in a situation that wasn't good for them, even if it feels scary. And it is, right? It's saying, hey, yes, it's going to feel scary. I'm not going to lie to you, and it's going to be okay. And I'm going to tell you the things you can do when you feel scared to feel a little better, but you got to trust me, And so it's, I think, using that skill and giving people the confidence, but you got to give them the techniques too. You got to tell them. I mean, like, there's a lot of techniques.
Yes. No, very true. And I think we have 3 kids, 2 girls and a boy, and one's done playing volleyball now in college, but we're a family of littles, Gabby.
Yeah. Littles are the meanest and toughest ones, though. Let's not play games.
They'll scrap. So she's playing her libero position. Our 8th grader, she scraps a lot and things like that. But
hit the ball as hard as you want at my face. Don't worry about it.
Exactly.
I know the type.
It's just fine. But I think what's interesting is I think that trust factor is so huge, right? But like explaining that, I'm going to show you have to trust me as your coach. I know you can work it out and figure it out, even if you shank a ball or do whatever, or you get in an uncomfortable situation. But I think that ownership piece of like, I'm going to choose to figure it out, because you chose, based on what you said, to figure it out, right? You could have gone another way and been like, I don't want to play middle. This is ridiculous. But you like, and maybe you said that, but you're like, I'm going to choose to do the work and do the reps and things like that.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's interesting, right? You have to trust your coach within that. I'm curious, where does that kind of drive come from for you? Is that just natural? You've always been that way of like, I'm going to figure this out, and well, that's interesting. So let me try it. And
no, I had to. I mean, if I was gonna go to college, pretty much I had to play volleyball. And there's a lot of things I did in the early part of my life that looked like super high performing, but they were really from a place of no safety net. And so it's amazing how focused you can get when you don't have a safety net. And then what happened, I think, is, yes, it is a natural part of my personality, like, okay, to focus and to work hard. I am pretty, I have one daughter. They're all different and they all can do it differently. But I have one in particular that I recognize the trait of like for example, this is a terrible example, but she'll come home from a trip and it could be midnight, but she'll unpack her suitcase and put the stuff in the laundry. And I relate to that because it's like, let's get things squared away. And so I've always had that. But my thing was early on, this is an opportunity for me and I'm going to get the most out of it and pay attention. And we talk about going over the tight wire when you have a net and when you don't. And it is interesting what we're capable of doing when we don't have a safety net.
Do you feel like you were running from something or running to something back when you didn't have that safety net?
I was building my life. I was building my life and creating a freedom for myself and independence.
Yes.
And I also was, for whatever reason, smart enough to recognize the value of being on this team. Like I knew it. I was like, you are really fortunate to be on this team. And I think I have that is a trait of mine, even to this day. I can take a meeting or be involved with somebody or work with somebody, and I understand the value and how fortunate I am that I'm able to.
That's amazing. I think that, this concept of gratitude, right? Of like, have gratitude and be thankful and all that sort of stuff. I think it's like, I don't know, right, the word, but it's like overused. I don't know, misunderstood maybe at the same time. But it's like, I hear this over and over and over again, right? Of like the gratitude, like to be in the position, to see the value, like even if it goes sideways, like there's still that thankfulness of like, well, I'm glad I had that experience.
Yeah.
And what did I learn and go forward? But it's, I don't know. Lately I've been, Gabby, in all these like gratitude and even mental toughness. I think these be a great leader. I think some of these concepts are like, we got to start redefining like what it means and what we're doing about it and how we show up and how we stand and sit. And like, we've got to start talking about these differently if we want to keep the standard like up here as high as possible for coaches, players, administration, whoever is going through this.
Well, part of the challenge might be that it's uncomfortable. To be good at anything is uncomfortable. To win is uncomfortable. You have to work hard to be the coach, to cut somebody, to bench somebody, to tell somebody they better get it together. Like whatever the million things are, all of this is uncomfortable. But I always say, especially in sports or the world for that matter, we try to pretend, but nobody cares. They're here to eat your lunch. And so I'd rather have a coach that prepares me instead of like, can't help me understand the defined lines of like, hey, you know what? You're not good enough right now. Meaning even what you're giving me, not you, the person, or your value as a human being, but you are not working hard enough. You're not giving me everything you have. And I'd rather that than I go and I have an opponent, let's say across the net, who's like, let me show you how ill-prepared you are. And, they don't break a sweat. And before you know it, you're on your way home and you think, what just happened? So I think that even in parenting sometimes, like we don't really do people a service by sugarcoating it, by not telling the truth. The world is unfair. By the way, look in sports. There's people who are bigger, stronger, and faster. They're just born that way. And you could say it's unfair. Yep. That's the way it is. And I believe that true about life too. I'm a person who I could have said when I was very young, it felt unfair. I wasn't with my parents. My dad died. And then when I got older, it could have felt like, hey, it's unfair, but kind of in my favor, right? Like, so it is that. It's unfair. But we don't do anyone a service by trying to make it like all okay for everybody, because then they just get crushed. So I think when but everybody wants to put everything in a box, like they use words like gratitude or discipline or all of these things, leadership. But ultimately, like you said earlier, the coaches, especially, they have to be these things. It's like constantly trying to learn, improve, be disciplined yourself, work hard, whatever the things are. And I think that would be the most impactful way to try to sort of pass this on to these athletes. But also a kick in the ass sometimes, unfortunately, is needed. And I think we live in a world which it's a tricky thing.
It is. And you mentioned way at the beginning about just self-esteem. And it's interesting. In your book, it was based on this powerful message, right? You say, true strength comes from owning your story while learning from others. And so that speaks very highly, and to me at least, of like that self-esteem of like own your story and take ownership of it and go and experience and do all these things. And when you talk about that self-esteem, I think one thing you bring up, right? If I have to deliver just blunt feedback to you, right? Because maybe you're not working hard, as the example you used, right now, like to go beat that opponent. And I have to deliver that feedback, but then I also have to receive it. I think something I experienced was sometimes I would take it and it would start crushing my self-esteem and my confidence. Have you had that experience? Like, how did you work through it? Because you made that comment about like your self-esteem, like almost catching up, and then like you seeing yourself a little bit differently. Can we dive into that a little bit?
Sure. Because like, let's say you're a boss or a coach and you have an athlete and you could sort of start. But by the way, it's also on the coach, right? Especially if you have a young person, you can't just come in all guns blazing, I don't think. It's like, hey, I need to tell you, you're better than what you're bringing. I see it. And my job is to help you be as good as you can be. And so you aren't working at your highest level. You're not being your best. And so I think when I say that too, you don't have to be crushing people. It can be a message of, this is how deeply I believe in you. You are underperforming. And so it's not, you're not smart enough and you're not talented enough. It's like, yo, this is an effort issue. So I think, from the communication side, I think that's an important kind of distinction. Now,
Yes.
From the athlete side, the other part of all this is, as a volleyball player or all the other roles I've played, what I knew a long time ago is I'm also just me, the person. And I heard an interesting quote about there's two kinds of confidence. There's a young lady, Maya, who wrote a book called On Visualization. And she said, okay, so you have confidence and then you have self-confidence. So confidence could be like you could public speak or you could go play, but self-confidence is different. It's our self-talk. It's like I could walk into a room. I don't know anyone. I feel comfortable enough to handle that. But what she said about self-confidence is it's connected to our character. And so for me, as a young athlete, I'm not by any means a perfect person. And certainly as a younger person, I had a lot of lessons to learn. But overall, my character was pretty solid. And so maybe within that is the separation of, first, I'm a person, and how am I showing up in the world and trying to be as a human being? And one of the things I do is I'm a volleyball player. So I don't think I ever let the whole thing crush how I felt about myself. That doesn't mean that I didn't cry behind bleachers or have to recover from like bad performances or anything like that. But I had a clear idea when I was young. Even Laird says it. I'm not a surfer. I surf. I'm Laird. And one of the things I do is this. And I think that that's a really important thing for people to develop as athletes, especially because you're not going to play forever. You're going to live as yourself for a long time. And so I think always to be able to decipher, when you win, you're not better as a person. And when you lose, you're not worse as a person.
I think it's such a great point, right? And again, you and Laird have done so many different things, right, over your now, not only athletic career, but just what you do now in business and still in athletics, that to your point, that's the hard lesson I had to learn too of, take baseball away from me. I was cut my freshman year, take it away from me. And I didn't know who I was, Gabby. I was confused. I started drinking. Like I didn't know what the heck to do. And I'm so thankful that happened at such an early age, at like 18, 19 years old, because I finally discovered who I was. And then when I tried out again sophomore year, made the team, and that opened up everything for me. It became what I did. Let me introduce you to Matt Phillips, and I happen to play baseball. I mean, it's just, when that's gone, I happen to do this. I happen to do that. And it changes the perspective.
I agree. And I think we should talk to our young athletes about that. Sometimes we'll get young athletes here, especially college, high level Division I athletes, and maybe they got hurt and they probably were somebody who could have played in the pros, but they're not going to. And that's a very hard position to be in. And what I remind them all the time, and listen, we all know there's a precision and a beauty that you get when you play sport that is for that. And that only. I can't recreate that. But
Yes.
it's a wonderful thing to have experienced. But I try to remind them, like, listen, you're a loaded gun. Just what's your next target? It's like when you can play sports at a high level and you can course correct and work for a common goal and take constructive criticism and learn how to lose and learn how to win and do all these things, man, you're lethal. What do you want to do? Because a lot of people can't do that.
That's such a good point. That's so good. Yeah, end of the day, it's you find that next purpose, next thing. Like you're taking me back now to like my playing days and stuff. Like I was ready to be done with baseball, but it was that what's next and like let's go.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think I would have discovered that had I not discovered who I was first, and then like ready, aim, and fire, and let's go that direction now.
Yeah, I think it's very easy because everyone around us reinforces like, oh, you're that good baseball player, you're that talented baseball player, I saw you. It's like, yeah, and that's why you see it's interesting because especially almost the better someone is at a sport, almost the worse that downside part is, where it's like, now what? And they didn't bother to look up to think, well, where do I want to be in 10 years? Because that's the other thing I would tell athletes. While you're playing, especially even in college and even more so if you're in the pros, if there's other things you want to do, start, because people want to help you when you're kind of dynamic and doing. When you come out of sport and they go, oh, so you're retired? And then you go, yeah, I want help. It's weird. They won't help you as quickly. Larry Fitzpatrick, he would intern in the summer for like, not like hedge funds companies, but maybe, VC funds and things like that when he was a professional athlete, because everybody will help you then. Oh yeah, sure. Come on. So let me tell you, that guy hit the road running when he finished, however, his career was super long. Yes. And so I will encourage athletes. So even if you're just a college athlete, whatever, forgive me, not just, if you're a college athlete, because that's a badass accomplishment, start poking around, just look up a little, look at the horizon, because man, there'll be a lot of people who are there to mentor you and help you.
That's a great point, because I think sometimes I hear this a lot from, I don't know if you hear this from collegiate athletes as well. Pros have a little more flexibility, right? They've got a little more time in the day, depending on the sport and all those different things and travel. And I get that, right? But a lot of times I hear of like, well, I don't have time. And I'm like, well, you don't need some significant amount of time. You need exposure. You need a glimpse inside. You need, and it could be an hour a week. It doesn't have to be this significant 20-hour a week thing. I'm already, playing and studying and doing all this stuff. It's like, well, no, just be curious, ask questions, sit and have a coffee with someone, to your point. Like there's different ways to get the glimpse inside and at least be a little more curious of what's next.
Yeah, I think it's a really important point. And because there's a lot of things that we get to enjoy in life if we let ourselves. Sport is definitely one of them, and it has its sort of time in our lives. But athletes don't realize that they could use all these skills that they've developed as a human being to take on other things. Ryan Holiday, he has a Daily Stoic, and he said to me once, the thing that's really important is proof of concept. So an athlete has a proof of concept. I didn't know how to do something. I learned how. So now I can do this new thing, and I have the confidence that even though I don't know, I could probably also figure out the way to learn how. And I think that that's so important.
Yeah, and athletes, I think we forget that a lot, right? I mean, I can't imagine the number of reps that you took in the game of volleyball. I can't. I mean, I think hundreds of thousands, millions, who knows at this point, right? But same thing in everybody listening, the sport you play, the number of reps you take, like you had no clue what you were doing. And you built and developed because you put in the time and the reps. And like, that's amazing, right? You learn to lead, you learn to communicate with your teammates. Like it goes beyond that. Like, but you had no clue. And if everyone says like, I had to figure it out at the start, no way. You had no clue and you figured it out. And like to use that leverage going forward, massive.
Yeah. And no offense to non-physical jobs. There's a different learning curve, right? There's something really straightforward about sports, which is beautiful, right? It's so straightforward, where you might be in another field where somebody just can figure it out faster. They have a math mind or something like that. But in a way, there's also going to be something that's a lot less painful.
Yes.
Than sports. So I am of the belief, though, is not to be in pursuit for the sake of pursuit. I don't actually agree with that. So it's really encouraging people to have the confidence to ask themselves the deep question of, like, who really am I? Where do I want to be investing my time and energy? What problems do I want to be solving? And trusting that, because the problem sometimes is we often do what we think we're supposed to do or we should do. And I think that gets us into trouble, but really to encourage people to follow their inner voice, their inner wisdom, even if no one in your life has ever done it before. That might be your path. And so that's something I always hope for young people, is to give themselves that permission and to be ready to go and ask for help.
Yes. Yeah, that's such a key point, right? That knowing who you are, being willing to listen a little bit to kind of where you want to go, because the body, the mind will tell you, and the universe or God or whatever, and then having the courage to go do that.
Yeah. And be thoughtful about it, right? Like when you have practice, it was at 3:00. It wasn't at sort of 3-ish. And so even in the pursuit of something unknown, I always believe, I'm a big believer of building scaffolding around it so that you sort of have a skeleton to work from as you're learning how to kind of, put the meat on the bones a little bit. You can't just sort of go, well, I want that to happen. Well, what is your strategy? What are your practices to accomplish that? And you can change that and adjust it, but you got to, I think, be that thoughtful about it.
So true. So very true. Let me ask you this, because I'll be aware of time and talk to you for hours. You made the jump from college to the professional ranks, right? You were doing modeling. I mean, all these different things you continue to this day. But what was the biggest difference between college and the pro circuit? I know it was kind of hardcore to then obviously the beach side of things, so the little different transition than probably most take. But what was the biggest difference? And then on top of that, you came across a lot of pro athletes. You played for a long time. What do you think makes the best stay at that level where others fall off? So there's two kind of probably loaded questions in there that I just asked there, Gabby.
Yeah, well, everyone's, an everything, all world, all American, I remember one year I played and 3 girls on my team were from the US Olympic team. I was the only beach. I was the only beach player. They all came from indoor US Olympic team. So, they're all savages. They're just big, strong. And what makes the difference is people who know, first of all, how to train correctly for themselves and their body, who stay passionate about the game, who don't get burnt out, and also their mental fortitude. I think at that level, it's people who deal with pressure very, very well. Because kind of your athleticism in college can kind of get you through certain things, and certainly at a professional level. And there's always I always say there's always a 1% in the 1%. So there are just some like real genetic freaks, but typically it's everybody's gifted enough, and then mentally they can sort of handle the pressure, and then they've got the other things, right? They've professionalized it. So their training is getting refined, better. They know how to recover, and they still actually enjoy it.
That's interesting. How did you keep the love for the game? Because this is a critical thing, right? Again, these themes that I hear is like you have to have a love for the game, and that's easy to say. I think sometimes challenging to do because of the grind that comes along with it. And I don't care if you're at high school, collegiate, pro level, it can sometimes feel that way. How did you ever get to that point? And then if so, like how did you work yourself through like kind of rekindle the love, if you will?
I'll be honest with you. The times it got the hardest for me is when my knees hurt a lot. And so really what made it hard for me I didn't mind the work. I mean, sometimes listen, you go to practice and you go, oh my God, I'm like one more day of practice, But you get the override system. You just go, yep, okay. And then 3 minutes later, you're like, here we go. Like you get an override. It's like why I still train this, people are like, how do you still train? I'm like, I have the override. Like most people at this point and who can consistently train, nobody wakes up every day and goes, yeah. It's like your override goes, yep. Anyway, starting at 8:30, starting at this time. So I think for me, it was always the override. Honestly, if my knees didn't hurt so much, I probably would have played a lot longer. And also I was always pretty strategic about what I was doing and where I wanted to be. And because beach volleyball is a very small sport, I kind of knew that I was going to have to probably, if I was going to take on other things, which take time, I was going to have to get going.
Very true. Well, sometimes it's kind of that simple a little bit sometimes of like, I don't feel like doing this today. It feels like a grind. And then you just start and you're like, oh yeah, there it is. To your point, right? Of like,
And one teammate gives you tells you something funny, and then I don't know, and then all of a sudden inside you're 15 again, you're not 30. It's just sometimes, and it is also knowing pretty great. Like, this game's pretty fun, pretty great, and not losing sight of how great that is. Doesn't mean not hard. Those things can coexist.
correct. Yes. I think that's such a key point. They coexist. Like, it's challenging, but it can be pretty darn great too.
I don't think there's anything that any of us do that isn't great, that isn't hard. I think those always coexist.
Very true. I agree. We don't tell stories about the easy things, do we?
Well, plus we don't learn anything. I never learned anything from winning. I always learned everything from losing.
Yes.
And then that's what you just start learning is it's not so devastating. You just go, oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. This is that thing again. What should I learn? And then there are days where you're like, how long is this going to last? Like this lesson, especially in business, sometimes you're like, oh my gosh.
Yes.
But
I've built a few of those.
But it's all part of the deal.
Yes. Yeah, it's part of the game. We just play a new game now.
Yeah.
But let me ask you two more questions. One, the last one will be like, where can people find you? Things like that as we kind of wrap up. But you mentioned that word pressure.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm curious your perspective on it, because again, we all perceive pressure differently.
Mm-hmm.
I could feel pressure, and I'll stick to the game of volleyball for right now, right? But I could feel pressure if on a serve receive I shank a pass, right? Or I don't get it up to the setter the right way, right? Or in the perfect spot. I could feel pressure from that. I could feel pressure from looking over and my coach gives me a look and I'm like, right? Or my parent, for goodness sake, gives me a look and I'm like, so, or there could be like I'm going into a championship game. I'm going into this like massive championship, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
How did you kind of look at pressure? And then what, like one tip, or you can give as many as you want to, but like how these boys and girls or men and women could handle it a little better? Yeah.
So my answer for how they can handle it better is probably a little modified from what I did, only because I've learned more. What I did is I would just almost focus a little more. I would feel it and then push it aside and try to, I guess it's a form of compartmentalizing, right? And just literally focus my gaze a little more. But what I would say to young people is a couple things. If you're working hard in your practice, you will give yourself permission to make a mistake from time to time. If you're half-assing it, you might think, this is how my game's going to go. And so this is why I think practice is so important. One, to make mistakes and to figure out like, oh, how do I work that out? How do I recover from that? So I would practice that in practice. So if you shank it in practice, what are you going to do mentally to get right back in? So it's only one ball. It's not three balls, right? And so to practice in a way, the way you want to compete, but also sincerely. Because there's something about when we know that we've worked hard, that when we get in the game, you're like, I have worked hard to be here. And making a mistake is part of the deal. Okay. The other thing sometimes is knowing that these emotions that we're feeling are totally natural. So, for example, if someone's going to go publicly, speak, for example, they get butterflies, they feel a little nervous, right? That's the exact thing they're supposed to be feeling to go do the thing. And so instead of looking at it as like this villain in your life, like I feel pressure, be like, oh, this is interesting. This is activating me. This thing I'm feeling, it can activate me down or it can activate me up. Like Laird says, fear can make him a little smarter. It can make him see a little clearer. It can slow things down. So getting a relationship with that pressure and being like, oh, there you are. This must mean something to me because I'm feeling this feeling. What am I going to do? I'm going to take a deep breath and I'm going to focus on the task at hand. What is it? Okay, it's bend your knees, it's pass to the thing, watch the server. Direct yourself to the goal versus, I can't believe I just missed that. We used to say if we hit a ball, I had a coach that'd say, okay, if your goal was to hit the line, but you hit it out 4 inches, you would look where you meant to hit it right after. Look at that, reinforce that. not, oh, I can't believe it. I missed it 4 inches. Get rid of that. What do you want to do? And focus on that. And the coach is not on the court, and neither are your parents. So focus on what you're doing, and not who cares about your coach, but what are you going to do?
So good. That's so good. Well, I love that perspective. I truly do. I think that perspective on, I'll say it a different way, but it's like, get back to like in that moment, what can I control? Like stare at the line where like you're going to hit it next time.
Yeah. Pass it to the setter. And the other thing would be cool is if I had certain teammates, like I had a setter that would get in my grill all the time. She's still a good friend of mine, but there was something about her that she was the right person. She'd be like, can you hit a ball? You're 9 feet tall and But sometimes we can have one teammate that can look at us and say, hey, you have this, let's go. So it's also sometimes being that for other people and knowing who is that for you and utilizing that opportunity when you're in that pressure moment to help you be better. And be that for somebody.
Yes. And you go back to like know your teammates.
Yeah, even if it's like, hey, you got this, let's go. Or let's say somebody volleyball. They hit it and they freaking blast it, they spike it out. I mean, but they are swinging. I'm like, yo, I love aggressive mistakes because there's nothing worse than somebody does some little baby shot and then they make you eat it or they hit it in the net. It's like, at least if you're going down, go down in a blaze. I love it. Go for it,
That's so true. Don't hit 8 out in a row, but please.
Yeah. But it's like, just reminding them like that aggression, let's keep that. Don't lose, don't diminish, but we've got it. Here we go. Like there's something too about knowing like people are backing you. Like I see what you're trying to do. Okay. Didn't execute, but I see where you're going with it. We got it,
So, and just seeing your body posture right there, you probably didn't notice that, but I encourage everybody to go back like 15 seconds and watch Gabby's body posture. Cause you just did this when you're like, hey, you got this. You were like, hey, you got this. Like you became bigger, chest out, shoulders back, and you're like, let's go. Right. And that's power. Right. And that's what people like athletes don't realize. Like go out. Like I tell all these athletes, like my son plays hockey and I tell them, I'm like, man, if you are excited to play a game, you're leaning forward on your skates, meaning like you're in attack mode, like any sport, like volleyball, like I know you want to be balanced, but you're on your toes, like ready to go. And like, it's like, that's the attack mode, but just you're seeing your body posture go of like, you got this. That's what you can do to your teammates and yourself.
Yes. And by the way, I have had other teammates that were like Zen masters. And that was brilliant because let me tell you what your opponent sees. Nothing. It's good. It's bad. And that person is like, yep. And that's a brilliance in a whole other way. And sometimes playing with those kind of people is very comforting.
Very true. That's very true. That's so good. I love your perspective on pressure. I think that's amazing. It's normal. And to your point, and I want to reiterate this, when you work hard, pressure changes. And I couldn't agree more with that comment and that statement of like, when you've put in the effort and busted your butt and a mistake happens, it's a different perspective because you're like, I busted my butt, that happened, but let's go, to your point, right? I'm ready for this.
Yeah. Because there's pressure of like, am I ready? And there's pressure of that didn't work out. And those are different.
That's your new book right there, Gabby. Add it to your list. Amazing. I love it. Okay. I always like to be aware of time and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So, and we didn't even get into like captaincy and leadership and nutrition and wellness and all that sort of stuff. So,
okay. The coolest thing I heard about leadership, I'll tell you really quickly. Rich Davini wrote a book on leadership. So we've already talked about being the thing. And he said that a good leader, this is a gentleman who was part of the Navy SEALs, chose a special team, couldn't figure out why, it was like skills, attributes versus skills. And then he talked about leadership, and the qualities of a leader are: 1, they are totally accountable. 2, they can make a decision. Doesn't mean it's always the right decision, but because they're totally accountable, they can say, hey, that was the wrong decision. We're going to course correct. We're doing something different. Okay, no problem. Their job is to make space to make everybody be as successful as they can be or their best. And they can't say that they're your leader. Only the people following them can say, that's our leader. And so I think that's a really important thing of you can take the role on. You might even have a captain of your team, but you might be the leader, and that's different. So I encourage people always, like, How do you create space for others to be their best? How do you never blame other people for anything, but taking on, personal accountability? It doesn't mean not calling people out on stuff. And then being willing to go, I assessed that wrong, or I thought this, but it's that. And I think that is really, really helpful. And also the skill to lead from the front, the side, or the back, depending on what's required. And those are all different. So, and nutrition, I just say eat real food. The thing about club athletes is they have all these weird snacks, and these poor young people are at gyms all day long, and then they've got a cooler full of weird stuff. Healthy fat, enough protein, and real food will certainly help your recovery and your performance. I know this to be true, and hydration is more important than we think. And electric neon drinks are not hydrating drinks. And you don't want to have those kind of drinks when you're competing, because they have sugar in them, and that suppresses your immune system. And you don't want to be competing and suppressing your immune system. So even good old fashioned water would be better than something neon. Now, if you want to put sea, minerals in there, or something that really does hydrate you, great. But I would try to avoid a lot of the kind of weird drinks, even though I know they're fun and they taste good. And they're part of that culture.
Yes.
It's not great on you.
This is a weird question. Do you like the LMNT electrolyte things?
I'm unsure of their potassium source, so I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, no, I appreciate that, because this is a whole different conversation with my wife.
I'm not selling it, but my brand has a very good hydration product. I was not going to bring it up, but it does have, it's freeze-dried coconut, and it also has Aquamin, which is a bioavailable mineral. So it does hydrate you. It comes from Iceland. They're very clean. They're single serve. So that is actually quite good. And again, that's why I brought up the sea minerals, because you could just put it in water. I wasn't trying to be selly, but yes, we have created a very good hydrate product.
I love it. And I'm going to put links to it too. Like, I think what athletes need to understand is like the mind-body connection, right? So like what we fuel ourselves with affects everything. It's not just like, well, no big deal.
And inflammation. That's the other thing. I mean, honestly, for these young people, because they're working so hard, it's the inflammation. If you can try to keep that down, it'll just help you recover. You'll feel better. And maybe it will also participate in helping you avoid injuries.
Yes. So very true. Yeah, find out everybody as you get older, like inflammation, bad.
Well, and it's just, listen, never mind from the athletic standpoint, just every chronic disease ever starts with inflammation. So you want to make that as like a universal practice for your life.
Yes. Yeah, as we get done with Halloween, and I think our daughter and her friends had like 14 pounds of candy each. And so we're like, wow, where's the great pumpkin needs to come and take all the candy, give it to the kids who don't need it, which is the trash for everyone who doesn't know what the great pumpkin does with the candy. So there you go.
Yeah.
Or replace it with something else. So this is so good. Okay. Last thing before I say thank you and wrap us up. But if people want to connect with you about wellness, nutrition, read your book, listen to the podcast, like where's the best place they can connect with you?
I think Instagram, probably Gabby Reece. If they really want to like talk to me for real, info at the Gabby Reece Show, and it will find its way to me. I don't make it hard to connect with me, not, kind of behind walls in that way. And I have a lot of very smart people on my podcast. And so if people want specific kind of understanding of certain topics in, let's call it the umbrella of wellness, they can look at the menu of people I've interviewed, and there's a lot of really talented, helpful people that I certainly have learned a lot from.
Yes. And we'll put obviously links to everything. And I'll tell you from personal experience that, Gabby, you were nice enough to answer a LinkedIn message that I sent, which led to that email address you provided, which led us to where we're at today. And I just can't thank you enough for spending time with me and pouring into me. I kind of joke sometimes I do this for me, like, just so I can learn and grow and implement all these certain things, which is true, but it's for everyone, right? And as I say to everyone listening, like take one thing and put it into action, right? If maybe it's how you deal with pressure, maybe it's you creating that space for other individuals, whether it's your coach or whether it's your parents or whether it's someone else like on your team. It's like create this space. I mean, everything that you've talked about today, even just like learning to fuel yourself a little bit differently and having that attitude of like, I'm going to figure this out, right? The way we talk to people. I mean, I just can't thank you enough for just your time. It's just wonderful. And thank you so much.
Well, listen, it's my honor. And one thing I know to be true is that we are all connected. And so, we should all maybe have a desire to, if we're contributing things, let's continue to connect with one another. And it's not like, oh, we know each other, we don't know each other. It's like, hey, your victory is my victory. My kindness to another person really is better for me. And just sort of doing that more, I think, is, if nothing else, it makes our own lives better. And I believe that more and more each day.
Absolutely. Well, everyone watching, listening today, please comment below this video. What's the one thing you learned from Gabby, and what change are you going to make? What are you going to implement? Because as I say on all these, right, action gets you where you want to go. And so it's take one thing and put it to action, and you'll see the biggest difference in your entire life, your sport, you as a coach, in relationships, everywhere. And cannot press that enough with you. So comment below, connect with Gabby on Instagram, reach out. Let's surprise her with bombarding of emails to learn and grow. Not that many, Gabby, of course, but you're busy. But please share this episode with your family, friends, coaches, teammates, and we'll see you on the next Masters of the Game interview. Thanks, everybody.